biggest things that I have learned over the years with healing and regulating my nervous system and also deconstructing from limiting scarcity belief mindset is that you can not only heal through your thoughts. You can understand your wounds, you can know where they came from, and you can logically know that you're safe now, and your body can still be responding to though as the threat is happening right now, even though the threat was years ago. So let's say you grew up in a home where disagreements were unacceptable and you ended up getting yelled at if you disagreed with your parents. Now, as an adult, your nervous system still holds that emotional memory. So then having disagreements with another adult just about even simple things can feel like a threat and send your nervous system into an anxiety spiraling overdrive. And that is because your nervous system is constantly taking in information about your environment, your body, your memories, and your thoughts, and always asking one fundamental question. And that question is, am I safe? So today I want to give you 6 practical ways to help bring your nervous system back down from a heightened state and back towards regulation, to start regulating your system to accept new experiences as safe and normal. And I want you to remember, the goal is never to try to not feel anxiety or fear or stress or anger ever again, because those emotions do have a purpose. The goal is learning how to move through them without abandoning yourself inside of them. So number 1 is slow the exhale, not just your inhale. When anxiety hits, our instinct usually is to take a deep breath in, and that can help, but I really want you to pay attention on your exhale, because if not, what usually happens is we start taking deep breaths of air in, gulping them down, while having shallow exhales, which actually then spikes our nervous system and keeps it in that state of survival. And so breathing patterns do influence your nervous system, and slower breathing on the exhale can help shift the body back towards a calmer parasitic state. So instead of trying to desperately inhale 4 more air in your lungs, inhale for 4, exhale for 6 to 8, and then repeat. And do that until you feel your nervous system back to a state of, you know what, it's safe to be in this present moment. I'm not trying to escape this moment. And with this exercise, you're not trying to force yourself to feel calm. What you're doing is you're physically giving your body information that says, we are not running, we are not fighting, we're not trying to escape this moment, we can slow down. And sometimes that's exactly what your body needs to hear before your mind can believe it. Number 2, feet flat, shoulders down, jaw unclenched. Pay attention to what your body does when you are anxious. Do your shoulders creep upward? Does your jaw clench up? Do your muscles tighten? And does your breathing become shallow? Because your body begins bracing for impact sometimes before you have even consciously processed what you are afraid of. Because again, the nervous system carries emotional memory. So we need to interrupt that pattern physically, and we do that by taking conscious driven actions of flat feet on the ground, of okay, I'm stable, of telling ourselves, hey, jaw unclench. And these tiny physical resets brings your attention out of that emotional spiral and back into the body and back into the present moment, so that way then you are able to actually ask yourself, what is actually happening in this moment, not what happened 5 years ago. And that's then where you're able to consciously start actually rewiring the emotional memory of, hey, just because we disagree does not mean we are unsafe. It is safe to speak up about our disagreements. Because remember, sometimes your nervous system is not responding to the present moment, it is responding to something that the present moment reminds it of. Number 3, name it to tame it. There is a reason why naming emotions can be so powerful. Research on affect labeling suggests that putting feelings into words can actually regulate emotional responses. So instead of saying everything is falling apart, pause and ask yourself, okay, what emotion am I feeling? Of, oh, you know what, I'm feeling afraid right now. And with this practice, what you're doing is you're no longer declaring that emotion to be reality. Of, oh, all of this is falling apart, oh, everything's going wrong, oh, this is horrible. You're not allowing that emotion to be the driver in the driver's seat. You're naming it of, you know what, I feel overwhelmed. I feel afraid, I feel angry. And what you're doing is you're saying that I'm experiencing fear, which is very different than saying I am unsafe. Once you've named the emotion, you can get curious about it, of why am I feeling this? What happened immediately before this emotion and this feeling appeared? And that is when then you can start following the trail back like an explorer into your subconscious nervous system and into your subconscious beliefs. And when you start doing that, you start actually seeing that underneath these emotions that surge with experiences are actual rooted beliefs from your childhood. So for example, let's say somebody hasn't texted you back as quickly as you hope. So now you start getting anxious of like, oh no, did I say the wrong thing, this, that, the other? And then you start feeling like you're being rejected. But when you start following that emotion of why do I feel like this, you follow it back into your subconscious nervous system and you say, hey, when someone pulls away, I believe I'm about to be abandoned. Now you can start changing that belief and say, no, just because someone has responded does not mean I'm about to be abandoned. All is well. Number 4, use cold water to interrupt the spiral. Cold water can create powerful psychological shifts. So in emotions, in moments that you're feeling super emotional about something, find cold water, put it on your face, put it under your eyes, put it on your wrist, or even the back of your neck, because cold stimulation, especially like on the face, like cold facial stimulation, activates what is called the driving reflex, which can then slow down your heart rate and shift your body's psychological state. Think about cliff jumping, okay? Some people, they get super anxious and anxiety filled, like when they're about to jump off a cliff, and then they start overthinking. And if they can interrupt that with the motion of just jumping into the water, after they're in the water, their psychological state is usually at a different mindset. They might be like, whoa, what just happened? Because again, the cold water is shocking their system. And then they notice themselves finding a different emotion of like, that was fun. Because the principle of that is sometimes changing the state of the body helps change the state of the mind. Which actually takes me to number 5, which is stop thinking your way into being calm. Okay, this one was really huge for me as somebody who's definitely in my head a lot, like logically thinking about everything, is that sometimes you cannot intellectualize your way out of a physical stress response. You can sit there and say, this doesn't make sense. I know I'm okay. Why am I freaking out? Why am I feeling like this? And then that can also lead to shame of just like, oh, you shouldn't be feeling like this right now. Like you're overreacting. And then that becomes its own spiral. And then you become anxious about the fact that you're anxious. But instead, you need to give your activation somewhere to go. Because if everything is energy and our emotions are energy, then we need to transmute and alchemize that energy into a different action. Okay, so move, walk, stretch, shake out your hands, dance, cry, hum, sing, or even journaling does help. I know that's like a form of intellectualization, but again, journaling is movement. It's getting it out of your head. And if you can get the problem out of your head, then you've already solved half the problem. Because the principle of this is sometimes you do not need to immediately understand the emotion. Sometimes you need to move through it before you can analyze it. So regulate first and reflect second. And number 6 is pair with language. I love pairing physical grounding with intentional language because that also helps to set in the new nervous state, like kind of normal of like, hey, this is okay. So when anxiety spikes, sit or stand with both feet firmly on the ground. Now, depending on the emotion, I sometimes will just stay sitting of like, it's okay. But if it is emotion that like I'm feeling super unconfident about, of like, let's say speaking about a topic on YouTube that might be highly controversial, before I'll make that video, especially if anxiety is surging from like past experiences of when I like had disagreements with religious people and then they started like yelling at me, that is still in my nervous system sometimes. I'm gonna be completely frank because it was traumatizing for me back as a kid. So what I would do in the past and what I still occasionally do when those like memories come up is I will stand up, I will put my hand on my heart and my hand on my stomach, I will inhale and then I will exhale longer and I will say, I am safe. I am allowed to speak up about what I believe. I am allowed to speak the truth, and people disagreeing with me does not mean I am in danger. So when you notice an emotion or anxiety spiraling, I want you, whether you sit or stand, again, put your hand on your heart and your hand on your stomach and slow your breathing and say, all is well. I am safe in this moment. This feeling will pass. I can handle what comes next. I am safe. And once you feel yourself begin settling, then again, ask yourself what belief is beneath that reaction. So let's use money. Maybe something happens financially and your body goes into panic, okay? You have an unexpected bill come up, you have to spend money at the store and you're like, ugh. People have unconscious beliefs in their nervous system that every time they spend money, they're clenching their jaw. Like that is how deep emotional memory runs into the body. And so instead of trying to manifest your way out of that feeling, you need to acknowledge what is actually true of, okay, I'm afraid right now that there won't be enough. And then when you found the belief, you can begin practicing by implementing and programming a new one into your subconscious system. And with changing the beliefs, that's then how you change your life. So now you can begin practicing new beliefs around money of it's safe for me to receive money. It is safe for me to spend responsibly. I trust myself to make wise financial decisions. There are always new opportunities available to me to make and receive more money. And if affirmations are a part of like your daily practice or your spiritual practice, you might even add affirmations around money like every dollar I spend returns back to me in tenfold and I get paid to exist. And the important distinction to note is that you're not using an affirmation to pretend the fear doesn't exist. You're acknowledging the fear, you're regulating the body, you're identifying the belief underneath it, and then you're consciously deciding what belief you want to practice instead. That is what you're doing, okay? We don't want to gaslight ourselves and we don't want to ignore the feelings because what we do not feel, we do not heal. You have to move through it to work through it. So again, when fear arises, when you notice yourself freaking out about something, when you notice yourself getting overwhelmed, we want to just interrupt that system, and we want to learn to separate the fact that we are not our thoughts and we are not our feelings. What we feel is not always true, and what we think is not always true. That is just information to our subconscious programming of, hey, what's going on inside my mind? What is going on inside the unconscious aspects of me? And what do I need to be made aware of? Because what I do not heal and what I do not feel and what lessons I do not change, I will just keep repeating. So if I want to evolve and I want to learn to experience new experiences and I want to learn to have a new state of being and I want to create a new identity and manifest a new life, which just means to experience something, then I need to give my body and my nervous system new experiences to experience. And that's another thing, like when you ask like God or the universe or source to become somebody new of like, I want a new life, then the universe or God or source, whatever terminology that you personally relate to the most, will give you those opportunities to say, hey, here you go. Are you going to act like the new person you want to become? Or are you going to let that experience and that circumstance dictate your emotional state and pull you back into your old identity? Which one are you going to choose? Because ultimately, healing your nervous system is not about becoming a person who like never gets triggered. Regulation, again, is not the absence of emotion. It is developing the capacity to experience emotion without immediately being consumed by it. You are a soul within a body, okay? This is your chariot. In like esoteric principles, you're supposed to learn to harness your chariot. Christ, your anointing is that like consciousness inside of you to realize, wait a second, I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my emotions. You know, the Buddhists would call this practice like emptying your mind, which is learning to separate and learning to watch your thoughts and learning to watch your emotions and be able to feel them and move through them rather than being consumed by them. Because a lot of people, when people are unconscious, they allow their thoughts to be their truth and they allow their emotions to be their truth. And they're like, this is just who I am. So when their brain gives them a thought of like, I'm stupid, they're like, yep, I'm stupid. And that's not true. They're actually probably a really smart person. They just have subconscious programming saying that they're stupid from an experience in their past that they maybe didn't get 100% on their spelling test in the 3rd grade. So we want to learn to separate ourselves from what we feel and from what we think and realize that that's just information happening of something in our subconscious wiring. And if you're somebody watching this video and you're ready to actually start examining your belief systems and seeing the performance happening within you and actually deconstruct from, let's say, even fear-based theology within a religion, I highly recommend checking out my book, You Are Art, which is all about examining those inner patterns and beliefs and then reclaiming your identity as a divine masterpiece. And I will link that below in the description for you. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode.